Teslas are being torched across the country. Dealerships shot up and set on fire. Spray paint to vandalize and make a statement. People in Southern California are getting notes on their Teslas, calling them complicit Nazis for owning electric cars.
It happened. What seemed impossible has become reality. A company that was once considered a symbol of the future is now drowning in a sea of protests, financial problems, and political scandals. Tesla, once the undisputed leader in the world of electric vehicles, is now on the brink of collapse. Sales are falling, stocks are crashing, and thousands of people are storming car dealerships in major US cities demanding their money back. But what happened to the company that used to change the world? Why has it now become the target of fierce protests, political attacks, and harsh criticism?
I mean, the things that he's doing is not trying to make America better. He's ruining our infrastructure, every department in our government. He's ruining, and he's right now destroying our economy. He's taken away all of our allies. We're a pariah in the world.
In recent months, we have witnessed Tesla's biggest supporters, people who once proudly advertised the company's cars, now openly hating it. Protests have spiraled out of control across the US. From Chicago to Los Angeles, from New York to small towns like Des Moines and Boise, people who were once loyal Tesla fans are now returning their cars and demanding compensation. But this is not just customer dissatisfaction. It is a revolution against Elon Musk himself, against everything Tesla has symbolized, against the dream of a clean future that Musk was so proud of.
Well, this feels more like a Tesla-only story when you look at just this fall in EV sales for them, that they're suffering across Europe, down 45% in January. The wider EV market in Europe up 37%, so rivals are catching up and performing.
And what's even more alarming is that Tesla supporters aren't the only ones challenging Musk's empire. The company's own employees have started selling off their shares and leaving the company in droves. Kimmel Musk, Elon's brother, and other high-ranking officials have started selling off millions of dollars worth of shares. Wall Street responded with a cold shoulder, and analysts began predicting the company
running around on stage with the Tesla stock price where the stock price had gone in half, and he was overjoyed. What an evil thing to do! What a creep! What a jerk! Like who derives joy?
And this is just the beginning. Protests, insider leaks, falling stock prices, all this is only part of a huge crisis that is dragging Tesla into the abyss. But worst of all, this crisis is not limited to the economy. Musk, who has always skillfully maneuvered between political factions, now finds himself at the center of a political storm. His harsh statements and support for controversial decisions only reinforce his isolation. The Tesla brand, once a symbol of environmental progress and technological achievement, is now perceived as a political statement that many are unwilling to support.
A 371, most were saying 350 to 360. Now they're coming in at 336,068, production of 362,615. So for some point of reference here, you're going back to Q2, maybe Q1 of 2022 in terms of the last time that they had production this or deliveries this low for one quarter. So again, Tesla deliveries worse than expected at just over 336,000 deliveries in the first quarter. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
That's horrible. Can I just ask Phil, how about the Cybertruck? How's that doing? You got a little inventory there in the Cybertruck?
But that's not all. As Musk and his company try to save face, they face growing problems from the government and competitors. Tesla is losing support at home, and even China, where the company previously found refuge, is beginning to turn its back on it. New automakers such as BYD and NIO, with government support, are quickly filling the niche that once belonged to Tesla. This moment has become decisive. Tesla is on the brink. Musk is facing what he has created, and the future of the company hangs in the balance. Will they be able to make a comeback? Or will we witness one of the biggest corporate collapses in history? Want to know how it all started and where it will lead? Subscribe to not miss the full breakdown of what is happening with Tesla and its leader, Elon Musk.
That's from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. People just choosing with their wallets to not buy Teslas because of that Musk-Trump association. And actually here in London, an activist group called Everyone Hates Elon actually have been hacking bus stop signs with posters. I actually passed one yesterday. First, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but it said the words 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. Illusion here, 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something. But this poster was alluding to the start of World War II, and the image was of Musk giving that hand salute that we saw at Trump's inauguration that many have attacked as a Nazi gesture. Musk, though, has neither admitted or denied what he was doing. But we're seeing the knock-on effect of that anti-Musk anger across Europe and in terms of sales.
Tesla, once considered a symbol of progress, is today experiencing one of the most dramatic declines in its history. It all started with a sharp drop in car sales, and the company's stock price began to plummet. In response, thousands of people, once loyal fans of the brand, took to the streets with posters against Elon Musk and his empire. The situation took on a massive scale when the protests, which began with a few symbolic actions, spread across the United States, even reaching cities such as Los Angeles, New York, and even small towns such as Boise and Des Moines. Those who once proudly advertised Tesla to their friends and colleagues were the first to return their cars and demand their money back. It all started with a single video. In Chicago, just 4 hours after it was posted on social media, a video appeared showing a group of protesters storming a Tesla dealership demanding their money back. These people weren't just disappointed with the quality of the cars or some technical aspect. In their eyes, Tesla had become a symbol of political hostility. They accused Musk of betraying their values by supporting controversial political decisions and taking an ambiguous stance on environmental issues. This sparked new protests, and soon the situation spiraled out of control.
Outperforming as well in some cases, doing better than Tesla. And you just have to think, how much more is this a sustained issue for Tesla going forward, given the fact that you have Elon Musk, who's been very forthright in his opinions, particularly weighing in on politics, particularly in Europe. We've just had the European elections, which Musk has been very focused on. But across the piece, when you look at the performance for Tesla in Europe, it's not just in small countries. There are a lot of countries where Tesla has been performing badly, including in Germany, in the UK, where it has been lagging, and Spain as well.
The protests began with returned cars, but soon grew into something much more powerful. Hundreds of people took to the streets with placards chanting "Dump Musk" or "Tesla betrayed us." These slogans were heard in every corner of the US, from large cities to rural areas. At one car dealership in Los Angeles, protesters staged a mass demonstration. People lined up to return their cars, claiming that Musk's safety record and political views no longer aligned with their value. These weren't just dissatisfied customers. These were people who had previously considered Tesla not only innovative, but an important part of their lifestyle. But the protests were not limited to returning cars. Civil disobedience and picketing became commonplace at Tesla dealerships across the country. In some cases, protesters stormed showrooms and blocked entrances to buildings, demanding full compensation for their cars. In one video filmed in New York, several dozen people can be seen arguing with security guards, shouting that the Teslas they had purchased had become political symbols that they no longer wanted to support. This marked the beginning of a wave of protests that spread to even the most remote corners of the United States.
Over the last couple of months. But the other thing that this could potentially be is an attempt at readjustment or correction by the Trump administration, in that one of Trump's closest kind of allies and supporters, and someone who's clearly very influential in the administration, is coming out to kind of push back against the recently implemented policies. So I'm thinking, or maybe hopeful is the right word, that this might be a signal that the administration is considering walking back some of those policies.
Thus began a process that turned into a real struggle for survival. Investors began to write off Tesla, and even old partners, including the government, began to distance themselves from the company. The question arose as to whether Tesla could survive this crisis, or whether it would become another victim of its own success. From the moment protests began to sweep the streets of America, a real disaster began within Tesla. Musk, who was used to being the center of attention, was unable to prevent the internal collapse of the company, and his own supporters began to leave Tesla, leaving behind shattered hopes and a negative legacy. One of the first signs that the situation was not just bad, but catastrophic, was the mass sell-off of Tesla shares by its key insiders. Elon Musk, Elon's brother, who had always been one of his closest advisors, began selling his shares in the company for millions of dollars. At first, this was justified by the need to diversify his assets or engage in family planning, but it quickly became clear that there were much more serious problems behind it. At the same time, other top managers took similar steps. Tesla's CFO sold large blocks of shares, which caused quite a stir among investors. Against this backdrop, the company's shares began to plummet every day, and investors who once believed in Tesla's endless growth now began to panic and sell off their shares.
Well, you will hear people over in Europe say the new Model Y, the Juniper, could be a difference maker, but that's been in that market now for more than a month. And you would think that you'd see a greater snapback if it's going to be a difference maker. Look, we could be wrong. It could be a difference maker once you get the sales for April, May, and June. But when you have a country like Norway, I think the sales were down something like 11% there. I mean, that's a very savvy EV consumer in Norway. And that's long been a strength for Tesla. Very small market, not huge volume, but I think almost all of the vehicles they sell there are electric. And they embraced Tesla long before others. And, you know, the reports there are not encouraging.
These sales, coupled with massive employee departures, dealt a heavy blow to Tesla. While the market watched this process unfold, a real collapse began within the company. Employees who were once proud to work for Musk's company began looking for jobs elsewhere. Engineers, leading artificial intelligence specialists, and designers who had created the best automotive systems at the time began sending their resumes to competing companies. Recruiters from Ford, Rivian, and even Apple soon flooded Tesla's offices, offering conditions that they claimed were much better than what Musk could offer his employees. And even despite Tesla's vaunted corporate culture, its employees no longer wanted to be part of a company that was rapidly losing its appeal in the market. One of the most striking examples of when protests and internal problems intersected was when the company's top management, including Elon Musk, failed to organize an adequate response to the unrest. Instead of trying to engage in dialogue with the protesters, Musk continued his usual strategy of mockery and ignoring the problem. He issued a statement saying that Tesla would definitely emerge from this crisis even stronger, claiming that the company shares were just a temporary blip that he had always managed to overcome. But this approach only made the situation worse, as it did not address the real problems facing the company.
Canada, the largest supplier of steel to the U.S., slapping new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods that are sold in Canada. And the 27 countries of the European Union imposing retaliatory tariffs on up to $28 billion worth of U.S. goods sold in Europe, including Harley-Davidson motorcycles and Kentucky bourbon. President Trump with the Irish Prime Minister visiting the White House today. The president suggesting his tariffs won't stop here, saying, "Of course, I'm going to respond." And tonight, right here, the new poll showing 56% of Americans disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy. The number's even worse now on the president's tariffs.
Against this backdrop, all attention shifted to Tesla and then to Musk, who began to lose not only the trust of investors, but also the trust of the general public. Musk, who had once skillfully balanced himself on the political front, now found himself on the verge of complete political collapse. The support he once enjoyed among liberal circles evaporated. After Musk began openly supporting a politician whose views sharply diverged from Tesla's traditional values, the company found itself at the center of a political storm. The progressive audience that once proudly considered Tesla a symbol of environmentalism and sustainability now began to perceive the company's cars as a symbol of political discord and confrontation. Musk tried to justify himself by saying that Tesla has always been for everyone, that it does not support one side, and that the brand continues to promote environmentally friendly technologies. However, these statements only exacerbated the situation. Progressive buyers who once saw Tesla as more than just a car, but as a symbol of change, have now begun to abandon the brand, associating it with political support they cannot endorse. This has been a powerful blow to Tesla, especially as competitors have begun to actively market their electric vehicles without tying them to political ideologies. Ford with the F-150 Lightning, Hyundai with the Ioniq 5, and BYD with the Seagull have all offered cars that quickly became attractive to the mass market. Unlike Tesla's politically divided image, in addition, a growing number of customers who previously supported Tesla began to abandon their purchases or even return their cars. One of the most striking examples of this occurred on social media, where several prominent public figures and celebrities began publicly renouncing Tesla. They no longer wanted to be associated with a brand that appeared toxic in the eyes of their fans. Just a few months ago, these same celebrities, including environmental and sustainability activists, were praising Tesla as a benchmark brand. Now they were publicly terminating their contracts with the company and urging their followers to abandon Musk's cars.
We have accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started.
He praised all the domestic actions he has taken so far on immigration.
And I deployed the U.S. military and border patrol to repel the invasion of our country.
And spending cuts.
We are draining the swamp. It's very simple.
Tesla found itself at the epicenter of a political and corporate storm. Street protests, falling sales, employee departures, political scandals, and supply issues were all exacerbated by the fact that Musk was essentially left alone, without the support he needed to deal with the problems at hand. As Tesla faced growing problems within the company and from public opinion, hopes for recovery faded. Musk's political isolation, loss of trust from key customers and investors, and aggressive market entry by competitors left the company on the brink of bankruptcy. But Tesla's most serious problems seemed to be just beginning. Against the backdrop of all the internal difficulties, external problems began to emerge, ranging from government pressure to international conflicts. The US, once an ally of Tesla, began to gradually abandon the company. Musk had previously been able to rely on the support of the administration, but under pressure from political opponents, his company had to face the consequences of its political positions. Musk, who had always skillfully maneuvered between political ideologies, now became a victim of his own strategy. While the government had previously actively supported Tesla by providing subsidies and tax breaks, with the arrival of new political forces, Tesla began to look like an example of a large corporation too closely tied to political gains. Instead of remaining a symbol of progress, the company became a target for those who did not share its views.
Worse than expected, 336 and 68 vehicles, 336,068 vehicles delivered in the first quarter for Tesla. For a point of reference, the street was expecting, the street account was expecting, based on analyst expectations.
Under pressure from the administration, which tightened rules for new players in the automotive industry, Tesla lost access to key federal incentives that had helped it maintain its position. Legislation changed, and even the simplest steps, such as subsidies for electric cars, would now cost Tesla tens of millions of dollars. This was followed by new rules aimed at supporting traditional automakers. Ford, General Motors, and other large companies that until recently were considered old-fashioned now began to expand their electric vehicle lines with government assistance. They immediately offered cars that were not only environmentally friendly, but also not tied to Musk's political views.
Hey Diane, this investigation really just beginning, and one of the key elements will of course be the surveillance video, and investigators potentially have a lot of it to work with as they try to figure out what caused this fire. We know that surveillance footage has been turned over, including video from each of the cars, which could prove vital to understanding what happened here, because each vehicle has its own camera system that works even when the car is off, and 16 cars burned in this fire, and right now investigators don't know what caused it.
At this time, Musk tried to do everything he could to salvage Tesla's image as an innovative company. He proposed new projects, including ambitious plans to create a robotaxi system and new electric cars with a more advanced autopilot system. However, these projects ran into serious problems. Things were no better in America. While production at Tesla's factories was at a standstill, competitors continued their development, and more consumers opted for more affordable and reliable brands. Musk still couldn't accept reality. He continued to make statements that only generated more media attention, but instead of trying to fix the situation, he became increasingly self-deprecating. By this time, his personal brand had become toxic.
After Trump imposed those sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel imports, the European Union retaliating with tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. goods. Trump making it clear this isn't over, vowing to respond in kind with sweeping retaliatory tariffs early next month.
They're doing what they should be doing, perhaps, for the European Union, but it does create ill will. And as you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
Canada also striking back with new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods, mostly steel and aluminum, but also computers and sporting goods.
It was no longer just Tesla that was suffering from his reputation. His other projects, such as SpaceX and Starlink, began to lose customers and partners. In Europe, Starlink was blocked due to political instability caused by Musk's actions, and governments refused to renew contracts with the company. And just when it seemed that things couldn't get any worse, an event occurred that symbolized the end of the Musk era. The Canadian government decided that it had had enough of supporting the American billionaire and completely severed ties with Tesla. The ban on the export of critical minerals such as lithium and cobalt was the last straw. The cessation of supplies of these materials to the US made it impossible for Tesla to continue production. The company's supply diversification strategies, which Musk presented as a solution, did not work, and Tesla found itself blocked. The company was unable to access the same materials used by its competitors, forcing it to suspend car production and put manufacturing on hold.
Tesla shares have slumped by more than 9% amid a fall in sales in Europe. The electric vehicle maker posted lower sales across 5 European countries, including France and the UK. Joining us now to discuss this is CBS News foreign correspondent Remi Inocencio. Remi, why do we believe these sales are dropping? What's driving that?
Sure. Well, Errol, basically what Elon Musk has been talking about over the past, say, few months, ever since Donald Trump's election back to the White House, that has been fueling this anger, this frustration, some even say disgust towards Musk, and they're taking it out on Tesla. Tesla now feeling the pain. But because of what's happening here in Europe, Tesla sales fell by nearly half across the continent just last month, 45%.
Having lost the ability to produce cars, deprived of a strategic resource, and in response to its inability to mend relations with employees and partners, Tesla could no longer claim the title of technology leader.